Welcome back to Martins and More. My name's Maury Rutch.
Just kidding. And I'm Spoon Phillips. We had some technical difficulties earlier, folks, so I was just pulling Maury's leg on that one.
And this episode's brought to you by our Patreon members. Join our growing community for early access to every episode, exclusive video versions of the podcast, behind-the-scenes footage, full-length product demos, and 2 tickets to when Spoon's going to smash that computer in real life. We appreciate you. Spoon, what's up with that computer?
Well, I'm on the road, as you know, out on assignment, and this is a Murphy's Law kind of thing because the cable that goes from the computer to the audio interface isn't being recognized by the USB, and don't know if it's the cable, what it is. Worked perfectly fine the last time we did this. The LAN cable that goes to the modem isn't working, so the computer's not recognizing that, so we're on Wi-Fi. Hopefully we'll be on decent Wi-Fi. So I'm using this headset to talk and hear, and hopefully we will get through this exciting episode. Though I will say I'm glad, we don't have a censor on this program because I've been dying to say that been wanting to get that off my chest for a while. So don't ask me to repeat that because I don't think I have the courage to do so. But
I said something so similar when I came back from vacation and realized yours was just starting. There's nothing like the feeling of watching someone else go on vacation, and there's nothing like doing that when yours just ended. So next year we have to time them up better. And
yeah, it's much better watching someone on vacation when I know mine's coming up. I have to say. That's very true.
Well, only one of us got that luxury in this episode, but let's not waste any more time. I've got a very special guest I would like everyone to meet, including you.
Oh, who might this be?
Well, I wanted to surprise you. We actually landed another guest on the program. This person was in charge of, or I should say, pen to paper. Is that what you say? Penned it? He wrote a really cool article about this specific guitar in the Martin Journal. Would you like to meet him?
Well, what model is it?
Getting ahead of myself. The Martin CEO-10 is today's topic.
Wait a second. I wrote the article in the Journal of the Martin CEO-10.
No, you didn't. He's in the green room. Let me just... No, watch. I'm going to bring him on camera. You ready?
Yep.
Damn it. You're right.
Very funny. Very, very funny. You had me there for a second.
All kidding aside, most kidding aside, today's topic is the Martin CEO-10, and I'm a little bit embarrassed we waited this long to do this program. We've had a CEO-10 in stock for quite a few months, and we got a little bit carried away recording all these great episode ideas that our viewership has been asking for since season 4, and we've kind of stepped away from, I bet you it's more than 1 or 2 seasons ago, we were actually doing episodes based on a Martin model. What better guitar to try today than the CEO-10? I don't know how many more are out there in the wild, but we've had number for a few months now, and I would love to talk about this with Spoon.
Well, actually, we could say this was a viewer suggestion because we had a viewer that reached out to me personally, and I think he reached out to you too, asking you some questions about the CEO-10 versus some other models. And at the time, I guess we were so close to heading off to Martin Fest that it didn't even occur to me that that would make a good episode. So here we are at long last.
Oh, very good. I must have missed that too, but it's a great idea. I really want to get down to the bottom of why certain things appear here, why certain things were chosen over others. And I know that you're a big fan of the CEO-7 like I am. When the CEO-7, made of Adirondack and mahogany, gave way eventually to the CEO-9, which is a very similar instrument made of mango top, back, and sides. Am I getting the cart ahead of the horse if I ask you, are you surprised at any of the design choices on this instrument with the CEO-10 as far as the top, back, and side would at least?
Not exactly, because this is the first CEO model that wasn't made from the designs of Chris Martin, of C.F. Martin IV. This is actually designed by Thomas Ripson, the new Martin CEO. He's been there for several years now, but in his own words, that still makes him very much a newcomer by Martin history. But yeah, so this was actually Thomas Ripson's design. And it's a fascinating instrument. Frankly, I'd love to own one. And in my usual way, I'd say if this had been made with a cutaway, I might actually have one. I really, this instrument really exceeded my expectations when I first had wind of it and what they were doing with this model. But we can save that for the main program, if you'd like, when we get into the details.
Absolutely. And before I forget, would you mind if I throw a trivia question your way?
Sure, go right ahead.
This guitar has been at Maury's Music for a short time as far as compared to a lot of other models. And certainly in the last couple of years, we've been moving away from appointment only to really online only. If you want to buy a guitar from us, you can arrange to buy it online and pick it up here in the store. But the days of coming and playing a guitar here at Maury's Music in person really have changed over the past 3 years. I don't want to predict the future, but I suspect that somebody in the chat on YouTube, or at least one of our, I won't give away if he's a patron or not, but one of our loyal listeners and friends that will see this program, or at least hear this program, is the only other person to play the CEO-10 at Maury's Music besides Maury. Who is that person?
You mean other than, well, I guess I didn't play it at your store. I played it at the Martin factory in the museum.
Don't answer now, but that answer coming later.
Okay, that answer later. Very good. I'll work on that.
All right. So where to begin? The CEO-10 is the first instrument designed by Thomas Ripson, and as Spoon mentioned a little while ago, he's been at the helm, at the steering wheel for a few years now, but this is the first instrument he designed for Martin guitar, and I would say it shares enough of the lineage from the original CEOs. When I say original, the one that I always think of is CEO-7, but if you went shopping for CEO Martin guitars, and hypothetically they were in stock everywhere, if you found them all on a shelf, the CEO-7, CEO-9, and the CEO-10, I want to say they actually have more in common with each other than a lot of the other previous models. Where would you like to begin the conversation, Spoon? And would you agree that those three CEOs are more similar than different?
Yes and no. I think conceptually, they're very similar. The CEO program goes way back and originally was a way for Chris Martin to sort of introduce interesting features, materials that would have been considered far too non-traditional. Everything from one of the early CEOs. First of all, the early CEOs were primarily dreadnoughts, and one of the early ones had laminated Brazilian rosewood that was purchased from the Steinway Piano Company, for example. Other CEOs included the 12-fret CEO-5, a 12-fret dreadnought. That was the first Martin guitar to feature a sapele, African sapele from the mahogany family on the back and sides. Things like that. And all the way going back, I think CO6 may have been the first one that was inspired by Gibson guitar designs. In that case, their classic slope shoulder jumbo and the J42, and it was kind of Martin showing his appreciation for pre-war Gibson designs, but also the fact that pre-war Gibson designs had body shapes that actually were inspired by the original Martin slope shoulder dreadnought, things like that. CEO-8 with its jumbo body size, that the Martin jumbo body size isn't directly taken from the Gibson or the Guild jumbos, but super jumbo as Gibson called it. But the design of the CEO-8 was made to pay homage to the SJ200, things like that. CEO-7 was the one that was inspired by the Gibson size L, and particularly the L00 with its, where for Gibson 00 was the level of trim and materials. In the way Martin's number is also that sort of stylistic thing. The L was the body size, but Martin called that new body size the 00L, which is the long 00. So it is a slope-shouldered grand concert guitar that's a little larger than their 14 fret 00, a little smaller than the 14 fret 000 in terms of the cubic body size. So the 000, so CEO-7 was similar to an L00, mahogany back and sides, Adirondack spruce top, the interesting autumn sunset sunburst, but a short scale guitar made with a vintage neck. CEO-9 used that same body size, the 00L body size, but like you said, with the mango backside and top. So unusual, much more unusual guitar, but still otherwise very similar to the CEO-7. CEO-8 was the big jumbo, in between those two, and then the CEO-10 is different in some respects, where they're the same. Well, let me ask you this. You say they're more similar than they're not. So in your opinion, where is the CEO-10 akin to the CEO-7?
Well, and really, it was a cheating way just to say it's not a dreadnought and it's not a really large guitar. And I'm sort of blurring the lines where if I like to say the 00L or the L00 with the CEO-7 and the CEO-9, I know after the CEO-7 was done, the CEO-8s were really big guitars, and it's sort of hyperbole now to say, what if Chris was still there? Which guitar would this be? But the fact that this instrument isn't radically different from the 00L size, and it's also a short scale. I know it's a 000, and it's it's not the same as a 00L, but this, Thomas could have taken this opportunity to go really far off the page and make it more like the 8 or one of those, more rare to find these days, dreadnought. So I guess it's just coming back towards the 00L idea, where if as a former Martin dealer and as somebody who knows shoppers, if somebody's looking for a CEO in the 7 or the 9 style, this doesn't really feel like it's radically different at all. And I not that it was supposed to be, but it reminds me more of those two guitars than the big dreadnoughts and the other sizes of the CEOs previously.
Well, where the CEO-7 was inspired, or was Martin's version of a Gibson L00, though being a Martin, it doesn't sound anything like a L00. The CEO-10 was actually inspired by Martin's own Modern Deluxe series. But the main idea of the CEO-10, one of the things that makes it so cool is it's made with sustainable materials. It's made with materials that are much more environmentally friendly than some of the traditional tone woods. And but then on top of that, it has some super cool cosmetic features in combination. Some of them hearken to the Modern Deluxe series, but also come from similar 1930s Martin influences. But it also has some very cool features that they don't have. And you can see some of them right now that you're showing this graphic. They have a fretboard inlay pattern that you don't get from Modern Deluxes. They have a pickguard that you don't find anywhere else, with a pickguard inlay that is not available on many other Martins. And I think that's all very cool. And they also have some differences in the bracing that you don't find on other Martin guitars. So I'm curious to say, okay, go ahead and where would you want to begin about, I'll just say that Thomas's conception was he wanted to look to the future of Martin with sustainable, high-quality tone woods and that are environmentally friendly, but he also was looking to Martin's past and combining features from way back throughout Martin's history that he finds appealing and wanted to bring together in this one guitar.
Can you repeat the question, Senator?
What is the wind velocity of a laden African sparrow? And there are people listening. There's a trivia question for you. I believe there'll be people listening to this that know the answer to that. No, they won't know the answer to that. They'll certainly know what movie that came from. Anyway, right. So Thomas Ripson, his real impetus for this was looking to the future and showcasing high-quality, beautiful, sustainable materials. And so this has, some materials that are used in certain ways that other Martin guitars don't have that normally would be less environmentally friendly, let's say. But the other one is he's also looking to Martin's past, and he's combining cosmetic features from some iconic, legendary Martin guitars combined together into this one artistic, cosmetic tableau that is being used on this instrument. So where would you like to begin?
Well, the thing that really makes me think of that first is probably the maple binding. I know that being environmental is, I don't know if it's going as far as some of the Robert Getzel designs and plastic-free instruments, but the maple binding, it ties into the modern deluxe design traits as you were speaking of earlier, but the fact that it's wooden binding, am I right to say that wooden binding even predates Ivoroid binding or the white binding they used back in the early,
Yeah, certainly. There are Martins that have wooden binding up through their history, and the Ivoroid when modern plastics became available in the very early 1900s, Martins switched those to replace ivory, but they continue to use wooden bindings, but not so much in the modern world. You got it on certain artist signature models, things like that, but then you get them in the modern deluxe with the nicely figured flame maple binding that comes from Europe, and that is a sustainable, replaceable material. But then you go with the maple binding that is used on the 40s and 20s of the Modern Deluxe series. I will go so far as to jump down to the pickguard, which is also plastic-free. It's actually a Guatemalan rosewood pickguard, which is super cool. And we'll get back to that later on when we start talking about the vintage models for where it comes to that pattern that's on that pickguard. So that's very cool. A wooden pickguard, I've always loved the look of wooden pickguards. It's one of the things that really excited me about this model when I first heard the concept behind it before I ever got to see the instrument at the factory. So those are two. So what's your next feature you'd like to talk about this?
Well, before I go that far, knowing that I have one right here, would you like me to test the pickguard with a pick and a really gnarly attitude?
No.
No.
In a word, no. You actually have one there with you, so let's see it.
Ooh.
Ooh, ah.
So maybe it's worth it if I do most of the podcast like this. You probably hear some of my voice.
A little bit.
How resonant my voice is now.
So yeah. So well, let's stay with the body. Yeah, look at that. So this is Guatemalan rosewood. Guatemalan rosewood comes in a variety of shades, you could say. Some of it's very dark and inky, like Cocobolo. Some of it's lighter and more tan like certain species of Honduras rosewood. Some of it is, in this case, it reminds me most of Madagascar rosewood. And I very much enjoy the figuring on this. And there's, and I know, when you're there and you can move it in the light and stuff, you're going to see a lot more interesting glints and sort of reflective spots that is common in Madagascar rosewood. So very cool. It's even got some sapwood at the top, which is that blonde wood natural figuring. And the top is Forest Stewardship Council certified European spruce. So this was chosen in part because Thomas Ripson was born in Germany, just like C.F. Martin the first, the C.F. Martin Sr. And so it was sort of a nod to the new. He grew up in the States and all that, but he was born in Germany, and this is sort of a nod to him. They use European spruce, but even cooler than that, it's got European bracing, which is something you do not see in the Modern Deluxe series, and that you've rarely seen on a Martin guitar. So that's pretty cool that it's European spruce. European spruce has more flexibility than Adirondack spruce, and different flexibility than you get from Sitka spruce that's on the Modern Deluxe series. But it's still carved with the Golden Era style bracing that originated in the old Golden Era series, that has more wood removed in the scalloping. So you get pointier scallops and deeper, wider troughs in the scalloping than you get from the standard series Sitka spruce. And so it's more similar to 1930 style bracing without being truly authentic 1930 style bracing. They don't scallop it all the way down to the fretboard and that sort of stuff in terms of the carving, not scalloping. They don't carve it all the way down to the fretboard, but it has, more wood removed to give you greater flexibility, make it the top even more sensitive to vibrations. And so you have European spruce top and European spruce bracing. In my ears, whether it's German spruce or Swiss spruce or Italian spruce or Carpathian spruce, they're all technically the same species, but the microclimates do matter. But in all of them, I hear a very distinct metallic ping in the top, as I call it, particularly off the trebles, but also off I think the way that the wound strings, the harmonics that they trigger. But you also get a kind of what I always called a glow, a colorful glow in the voice that you don't get out of Sitka and you don't get out of Adirondack. You do get it out of Engelmann, but I think Engelmann may have more of it than European spruce. I think it's subtler in European spruce, but it's like a pastel kind of glow that comes. And I can think right now of European spruce, Madagascar rosewood OM, that was the John Redburn signature model. And our great friend Rose Marie had one of those at Martin Fest, and now it's several years old. And so that beautiful European spruce, colorful glow in the undertone and in the overtones, where it meshes together. You won't even call it a mesh. It just really, the different colors really meld together in a very smooth way. And you only hear that from Engelmann and European spruce. So, but it's still stiffer, and it still gives you a better attack response. That's why some people say it sounds more like Adirondack spruce than Sitka does. But then it sounds like Sitka, but it's definitely its own thing, and I think it's a very pretty sounding spruce. And here you also get it in the bracing, which is a very unusual, maybe even unique combination to Martins that have been made in a very long time, certainly. There may be some, I don't remember if the George Martin model may have had European spruce bracing. And there may have been one other unusual, one of those CS models, custom shop models, back in the day that may have had it too, but I don't really remember. But very cool, Guatemalan rosewood, European spruce top, wonderful combination of tone woods.
Well, those of you out there listening and watching, what do you think it sounds like? Let's pause for a moment and listen to a sound sample of the Martin CEO-10. What do you think of that, Spoon?
Some golf claps. Well, I'd say for a guitar in its infancy, it sounds really, really pretty. Nice balance. It sounds colorful, but that's only going to become more and more, more so. Guatemalan rosewood's a very warm rosewood, so it's nice and warm. It's maybe not as thick and brothy as you get out of Indian rosewood. And I equate it more to some of the darker sounding Brazilian. I think you get more Brazilian colors in it. Maybe not as many. Maybe there aren't as many crayons in the box, but it's certainly one of the most complex rosewoods out there. And that spruce top, I think, really helps it sound lush, but not too lush. I think you still get a great deal of clarity, particularly in the trebles. So I think it's a really very cool, lovely combination that's only going to sound better and better as it ages.
Yeah, I haven't played it all that often, but when I do play that guitar, even whether it's listening back in a video or playing it myself, it sounds, I don't want to sound cliche, it sounds mellow without sounding dull. And there's something about, especially like the upper mid-range, not necessarily a really fat, growly voice, but there's something where other guitars might have a shine or some kind of sparkle. This has something that, maybe the word smooth, if you took a really, really sharp picture and smoothed it a little bit, there's something smooth about the upper mid-range that I don't know enough about the entire construction. Am I hearing mostly the FSC European top, or is that something to do with that plus, 5 other things in the build? I'm not quite sure.
Well, comparing it to a regular as if there's anything regular about the Modern Deluxe, but of a Modern Deluxe with the Sitka top and the Adirondack bracing, that's a good description. I think the difference is the European spruce. That's that sort of pastel, like you said, smoothness. It doesn't have a lot of crisp edges to it that you get from a brand new Adirondack, and it doesn't get it's not as growly as you get from Sitka. It has a bit of both, but it's its own thing. I think this particular instrument, I think, absolutely excels with what you just did. The very pretty, even finger picking patterns. I think it's ideal for that. I think the 1/4-inch bracing. This has 1/4-inch bracing throughout, so it has what I call OM bracing. And it doesn't have the 5/16 bracing you get on normal 14 fret triple O's. It is a short scale neck, so that's traditional in terms of the triple O. The only other regularly produced triple O with all 1/4-inch bracing and a short scale is the triple O18. And this shares some dynamics with that in the sense that when you go at it with a pick, with big roaring strums, you don't get the same kind of roar out of it that you get from a long scale OM or a short scale triple O with 5/16 bracing. It doesn't overdrive. It's not so much that it's a matter of the top overdrives. It's more like the energy you put in it isn't amplified in the energy sense. It's got plenty of volume and it's just, and projection and all that. In fact, I think it projects much more like an OM. I remember this very clearly because I got to spend some time with the prototype and then did the full video review for One Man's Guitar and also for Maury's Music. That it takes that energy in and kind of gives out what you put in it. It doesn't increase it the way a dreadnought does. You don't get that satisfying roar out of it, and you don't even get the roar out of it that you get from your OM28V. It's more civilized than that. It keeps its signature and doesn't. It's not like you're turning up the distortion on the amp the way you do get with a dreadnought, and it doesn't turn gnarly on you. So it's, for me, for somebody who does that and likes to do that, this is, for me, as a guitar that's better for strumming and singing and David Crosby, pretty finger style stuff. And not a John Fahey, let's just tear the guts out of this thing with finger picks and a thumb pick. I wouldn't say it's ideal for that. I think it's a very beautiful guitar that sounds as beautiful as it looks.
It's a very polite sound, I think.
Civilized. I consider it very civilized and refined sound to it, and it's a different refined sound than you get out of certain Adirondack guitars or certain Sit guitars or certain Engelmann guitars. It's its own thing. I think it's a very fascinating combination of woods, and I very much love this sound of this guitar and would be very happy to have one if money was no object. I mean, there's so many things I like about this guitar. Those are the woods, those are the voice. We can stick with the body for right now, if you want, and talk about what's all over the outside of the body and also what's on the inside. Maybe we can talk about some of the things it has in common with the modern deluxe is the bridge plate.
Not just a bridge plate, but there are at least two things similar here between the modern deluxe construction and this guitar. But I want to take this opportunity to ask you, are you allowed to answer this question? If not, just make a funny head shake. I'm the tiniest bit surprised that it's not a natural looking top, that they chose a burst. So two-part question. Since its inception, were they completely sure from day one this was going to be an amber tone guitar? And if the answer is no, have you ever seen or played a prototype without a colored top? But I know you can't tell us everything you know.
Oh no, I had not. That's a good point. No, I saw it with the top. This is not just an amber burst. This is a 1933 amber burst. So this is going back to, if it's not exactly the same, it's supposed to be. But every time you spray on a sunburst, it's no two sunbursts are the same. They're sprayed on, and even if you were using precise robots, they're still not exactly the same. But this goes back to when Martin was starting to look at trying to authentic things, and I'm pretty sure it was Fred Oster at Vintage Instruments that gave them. No, I beg your pardon. I bet you this is not. Bet you this is Stan Werber at Elderly Instruments. He was the one that custom ordered burst guitars that were copying a very specific 1930, I think it's a 33 OM18. He had one in very good condition where what they called in those days the shaded top hadn't faded. So it hadn't been exposed to the sunlight a lot. And that's where that first original 1933 amber tone may have been the term they originally used. But that's different than other amber tones that Martin's come out with over the years. So they went back to trying to do a very accurate representation of a 1933 OM18. And I'm almost certain that's where this top comes from, the spray of this top. I think that's very cool. Also, since you decided to go on the outside, we can talk about the pickguard, and we can talk about the bridge, and those two snowflakes on the bridge and the pickguard. They come from the 1930 OM45s. Deluxe, the 1930 OM45 Deluxe. And the very first one was kind of a prototype that had a different pickguard pattern on it. And that was purchased in a pawn shop by Leonard Sly, who's the world knows as Roy Rogers. Roy Rogers played an OM45 Deluxe, and we did not in the modern world know that that wasn't one of the 11 OM45 Deluxes that was made. It was actually predates them. When the real one finally went on auction, it was discovered that it wasn't one of the OM45 Deluxes that everybody knew about. It predated it, and we all knew it had a different pickguard. No one knew exactly why. This is the pickguard that's on the OM45 Deluxe, 1930 OM45 Deluxe. They only made them in that 1 year in the Martin Museum, and that all the actual run of OM45 Deluxes have. And it's I can see why they changed it. I think that the Roy Rogers is interesting because it was unique, but it's not nearly as pretty as this one is, this bouquet or whatever you would call it. So, and that's where you guys are used to the round snowflakes on Style 42, the modern OM42s. But it actually came from the OM45 Deluxe. The Martin OM45s from 1930s don't have the snowflakes. Only the Deluxe had the snowflakes. But so that's a very cool combination, particularly on that very cool rosewood pickguard. And it's a very accurate shape to the pickguard as well. There's a variety of OM pickguards in the modern world. When Martin started making pickguards again in OMs in 1969, and then introduced them as regular models in 1990. It wasn't until very recently did they start making pickguards that look like real 1930 OM pickguards, and this has one. So that's all very cool. So let's go back to the bridge plate. So tell me about the bridge plate.
Oh, the modern deluxe bridge plate treatment. Here we have a carbon fiber VTS Adirondack carbon fiber sandwich. Did I make you hungry? A sandwich of those three things. So the outside and the top of the basically levels 1 and 3 are carbon fiber, and level 2 is VTS Adirondack. And that, along with some other features, is certainly a big reason that guitars like the modern deluxe instruments have a lot of resonance, a giant amount of punch and push. And I wonder, a few moments ago we talked about why I was really impressed with the mellowness and the smoothness of the top voice of this guitar. When I hear you and I talk about the bridge plate, that makes me wonder. I really have it in my mind that kind of bridge plate adds a lot of sizzle, a lot of presence, and a lot of forward, upper mid-range clarity that wouldn't arrive at the sound that I think I'm liking from the top. I know it's a big proponent of why this guitar does project, and it's not dull sounding, and it's not reserved. But if I'm being really honest, and I like to say we both always are on this show, that doesn't feel like a main ingredient to the end result sound I'm hearing from this guitar, and that makes me wonder how much the top is influencing it. Because if you built a guitar with this construction like Guatemalan rosewood, and you told me that one of the first ingredients was going to be that bridge plate, I wouldn't necessarily let my mind go to the sound that eventually comes out of this guitar if I only knew that part of the construction. What do you think of when you hear about that bridge plate design? Because I think that's a snappy sound.
Well, yeah, but there again, you mentioned before, it's impossible to tell what's causing what. On the modern deluxe, you also have the liquid metal bridge pins. You have this bridge plate that has a very thin piece of carbon fiber, and this is not. I can't think of the term for carbon fiber in its natural state, which has a chaotic matrix is the right word, I think, to the molecules. This is the one that has the uniform one that makes it extremely stable, extremely strong. And so this is a man-created carbon fiber, and then it has a piece of torrefied Adirondack spruce inside it. And the carbon fiber is primarily there to protect the bridge plate from the ball ends of the strings, and from the weather and the humidity and all that kind of stuff, so that stays together and doesn't get chewed up over the years. But there's something else about that. Both liquid metal bridge pins and carbon fiber, when they are, and liquid metal is a form of, it's actually a form of glass. And it's a form of liquid glass. It's literally an extremely thick liquid state in terms of the science. So, what physicists would tell you or chemists would tell you. But in both cases, you have a lattice or a molecular structure that allows energy to pass through it much better, with a lot less of it being lost. So that the vibrations from the strings are getting all the way to the top. And so they're not being absorbed by the pins. They're not being absorbed by the bridge plate nearly as much. Mm-hmm. And I'm, this is very much a layman trying to impart what I've been told by Tim Teal and Fred Green and people like that know that, the science better than I do, the acoustic science involved in all this. And so that definitely increases volume and sustain, both those two features. And I must admit, I don't remember. Can you say, does the CEO-10 get the liquid metal bridge pins? I don't remember. Let me see.
I thought it did. Let me see.
I think it does too. I'm almost certain it does. But let me just say this.
Oh, bone abalone.
They're bone. Okay. So that's what. So they're not liquid metal. They're traditional. So it's just, in this case, it's just the carbon fiber that's increasing the sustain of it. So that may be a difference between what you're hearing, but also you're hearing torrefied Sitka with torrefied Adirondack bracing. So what you're hearing, I think some of that pop and spankiness to it, or whatever, that may not be a positive sounding term, but there is a leap out of the sound hole thing that you get from the modern deluxes that is not all about the bridge plate. It's also about the species of spruce. It's also about the torrefaction. It's also about the bracing and the fact that it's Adirondack bracing and torrefied Adirondack bracing to boot. So
and you're talking about, you're talking about the modern deluxe when you say
modern deluxes.
Yeah.
And this has European spruce and European bracing, even though it's carved in the same way. And this is not, we're not doing apples and apples here. So it has the same bridge plate, but which increases sustain, but it's still a wooden bridge plate inside. That information is still being transmitted to the top, to the soundboard, but it's being going through carbon fiber, and that definitely has to have some effect. Every time somebody tells me, well, why would abalone inlaid around the top have an effect? And my question is, my answer to them as a question is, why wouldn't it? When everything you can do to a guitar is got, and you're asking energy to pass through it, that's eventually going to be turned into sound waves. How can it not? But it's impossible to say how much of what you're hearing that's different from that is caused by the top and the bracing, or which one's causing the most. But it's got to be that. I mean, it sounds to me like European spruce. I know the sound of European spruce, and the CEOs don't have it. So I'm sorry, modern deluxes don't have it. So yeah, that's and they also don't have Guatemalan rosewood. So they have Indian rosewood. So again, different rosewood absorbs and reflects sound differently, and I think has more colors to the crayon box than Indian rosewood does. Indian rosewood to me is a big sloppy wet paintbrush of primary colors of reds and greens or whatever it is, the different shading. Guatemalan is still a lot like that compared to Madagascar or Brazilian, but it has a lot more differences in the shades, and it's got a broader rainbow and does have color flecks in it that what I call them, what I hear at different registers and from different strings and different harmonics. Then it's more colorful, more colors to it. So it's impossible to say what's causing all of the differences, but clearly European spruce and the lack of Adirondack and Indian in combination is for the number one suspect.
Yeah, so in my defense, I don't know a lot of Martins, at least not in modern times, with Guatemalan back and sides, FSC European spruce, European bracing. It isn't like I can be held to the fire where I should know this. It's very strange. Yeah, and that's the third time now that you said crayons. Super fast tangent. Did you see Carolyn's Facebook? We're on vacation at a big restaurant, and it was one of those tables that gives you things to draw on. And Cameron and Aunt Lori are drawing, tic-tac-toe and hangman and stuff. And on the other side of the table, Carolyn asked me to take a picture of 3 drinks because she has this game she plays. She puts her drink next to my mom's drink, next to Samantha's drink, and sends it out to her friends. Guess who's drinking what? And I took a red crayon, and I wrote red rum backwards on the tablecloth, and nobody noticed. I was so upset.
Well, no one said anything, but I did not see it. I'll have to look for it. I've been a little busy. You talked about me being on vacation down here. This is a working trip. So I got to take 2 days off earlier this week to have a 4-day weekend, but this is a working trip. So I'm on my break right now. But
that's not what I'm telling everybody.
Yeah, I know. But it is fabulous, and we're talking about tangents, I'm wearing fancy clothes and at a very nice cabana. It's not my cabana. I'm my employer's guest at this cabana. But I'm happy to get all the lobster rolls they want to feed me. So, but anyway, La La Lobster at Cape May. We've tried 3 different places. Blows everybody away. It's got the authentic New England roll. It's more like a Connecticut because it's butter. It's not mayonnaise, but it's not cold. But boy, the butter is just awesome. Really flavorful. Really great. La La Lobster, right on Ocean Avenue. I think it's called Ocean Avenue and Cape May. Anyway, speaking of colorful, how about the abalone? The high-colored abalone all over this front of this guitar. We have the Style 42, which means it is on the fret insula that goes around the bound neck bound with maple, with highly figured maple. That's so cool. And like I said, the OM45 Deluxe pickguard and the 2 huge round snowflakes on the ebony bridge that came from the OM45 Deluxe originally. But you just for a second there showed us the fretboard. And the fretboard, you're not going to find this on a modern Deluxe. The fretboard is, people that say, trivia question, people out there will immediately recognize this pattern. This pattern in modern times appeared on certain Koa guitars, not Style 25, but you say Style 25, but that's wrong. There you have dots, Style 25 Koa guitars. But there is maybe it's Style 37 that has this fingerboard marking pattern. But and it's been used here and there on some other artist signature models and so forth. But so, Maury, what is this interesting pickguard pattern?
The literal name for it?
Yeah.
Stand by.
Oh, come on. How can you see these unusual... First of all, you've got a Maltese cross in the center, and up and above it you got 2 diamonds, but with arrowhead chevrons. Also, that's the whole pattern. It's only at 5, 7, and 9. So it's a very old pickguard pattern that was originally designed for 12-fret guitars. This is a trivia question. I'm sure people are pointing out right now what it's called and where it came from in the chat on the YouTube version of this podcast. Of course, people who are only listening to the podcast can't see it, but they can certainly look up this model online.
Am I saying Foden? Am I pronouncing it right?
I think it's Foden. It's Foden, and so that, if you looked at it, I would have said Foden, but I'm pretty sure I always heard Foden at the Martin factory. William Foden was one of the premier classical guitarists in America in the late 19th century and early 20th century. He lived all the way up into the World War II era, but he was composing and playing the classical repertoire at a time when Martin was not making steel string guitars. But what's unique to this is he was one of the rare artists. Vida Alcott was the other one, and that they had special Martins made for their students. So they sold Martin guitars. And in his case, he was the one that came up with that. Whether he came up with it or somebody at Martin came up with it for him, said, what about this? But he may have designed it himself. But for many, many years, you only saw it on a William Foden model. And these were 12 fret, little 12 fret O's and double O's. And they're very rare, and people are very proud to have them who can have them in their collection. But then Martin brought that pattern back, like I said, in the modern era. Originally, I think on style 37 Koa guitars. But I've always liked it, and honestly, I think it looks appropriate on a 12 fret guitar. On a 14 fret guitar, similar to the old 3 dots that you saw on the OM18s and stuff, it looks a little sparse, but I think it looks really cool on this guitar because of all of the other pearl all over the place. So to take a Foden package for the fretboard, and the Foden guitars didn't have fancy pearl. They were very woody guitars. And to put it on this model, I think it was absolutely inspired to have the William Foden fretboard from the early 1900s and match it with the 1930 pickguard design and headstock design of a 1930 OM45 Deluxe. So, and maybe we can look at that pickguard. Pickguard, headstock. Boy, I clearly haven't had my Ovaltine today. Need my iron, need my energy. But how about the headstock on this amazing guitar?
Let's take a look.
Guatemalan rosewood headstock that matches the back and sides. And on these instruments, they didn't make very many of these instruments, and they went out of their way not only to find sides that looked really great with the back and back in terms of the color and the figuring, they also went out of their way to find face plates made of Guatemalan rosewood that match the coloring and the figuring on the back and sides, and I think that's really cool.
Now, what's the literal name for that inlay on the headstock there? Is that torch?
That is a torch. That's but it's two things. This is unusual as well. The OM45s and the OM45 Deluxes from 1930 didn't have a Martin brand on them. They only had a stamp on the back of the neck. They didn't introduce the CF Martin logo on a headstock until 1931, or maybe 1932. But maybe I think it's 1931. But so at the top you have the CF Martin script logo in abalone. So it's not a decal, and it's not just normal inlay. It's actually high color abalone inlay. You don't see it very well in this photograph because you know what it's like. You have to have the light hit it just right for it to really stand out. So it's over top of the torch that was on style 45 Martins in the 1920s. And up and through 1930. 1930 was the last year for this torch. There have been other torches. Some of them are older that were borrowed from Martin ukuleles. Not Martin ukuleles, I'm sorry, Martin mandolins. But this was the one that was on the 0045 and 00045 in the 1920s. And they put it on the OM45 and the OM45 Deluxe, and it's always been my favorite torch. So here you have both. But here's a trivia question for you, Maury. What is unique about that script logo that's used for that came over from the Modern Deluxe? But when they went to do the Modern Deluxe, they decided to pick one particular script logo. So this is not the script logo that you see on 1930s Martins, into the 1940s Martins, and the 50s Martins, and the 60s Martins, all the way up to now. It is unique. It was only used in 1 year, only on a handful of instruments. Can anybody tell me, if you know me, you might know this, what year is that script logo from?
I knew this right when this guitar came out, and I told myself, don't forget And I didn't tell myself, don't forget you might podcast about it in 2024. I want to say 1936.
That would be incorrect, but that's a good guess. I remember when I first came to review these at the factory, and I was talking to Tim or Jeff Allen, Fred, or whoever it was, and talking to them and looking at it, and I was like, wait a second, what have you guys done to the script logo? So this is unique. You guys made this, and they lit right up because they knew something I didn't know. The Martin used this. Martin used this script logo in 1932 only, and it's very subtle. But when you get a real close up of it, when you look at it, it's a little fancier, and there's a little more flaminess to the tips of the stuff. And so if you put it side by side with other Martin script logos, you'll see what I mean. It's just a little more curvy and ornate. And I don't know why they did it. They clearly changed to this briefly and then decided not to. And I've never seen a 1932 Martin that had it in person, but I always like, when I see 1932 Martins for sale, I always like to get on on the website and try to blow them up and see if I can locate an actual Martin that has it. But a very cool little piece of trivia for people out there. So it's got the Modern Deluxe script logo that was unique to 1932. And I just think it's cool that Martin decided to do that. So somebody found that and said, ooh, let's use this. And then it's got the 1930 OM45 Deluxe torch that goes along with the pickguard and the two snowflakes. There's something else on this guitar that is directly inspired and taken from the 1930 OM45 and the Martin factory. And it's something that's unique to that 1930 OM45 in the Martin Museum. And can you tell us what it is? It's on all of the Modern Deluxes. How soon they forget.
The neck.
Well, what's unique on that? What is unique from this on the Modern Deluxes that's different from any other Martin guitar, except for some recent special editions that got it added, like the CEO-10?
The vintage deluxe neck.
That is correct, sir, for 50 points. Or 45 points, since it's from the OM45. That's correct. That's neck shape. The neck shape is unique to the Modern Deluxe series, except when they decide to put it on special editions. But it's taken directly from the 1930 OM45 Deluxe in the Martin Museum, which is my all-time favorite guitar neck. Mm-hmm. I've got to play 4 OM45 Deluxes, and none of them have the same neck. And they're all slightly different than the one at the factory. There's just something about when you hold it in your hand and you're going up the neck. First of all, it's effortless, but the apex, it's a very mild V, first of all, shallow V, shockingly shallow. A lot of people who know Martin vintage guitars from 1930s, 36, 38, play that guitar and they're like, oh my God, there's the V in the neck and everything, it's just so low profiled. But when you go up it and your hand naturally turns as you get closer to your body and your wrist turns, that apex of that V stays right in the nook of your thumb all the way up. And it's almost like it's moving and your hand's not moving. It's hard to explain, but they only put it on the OM 45 Deluxe Authentic 1930. I begged them to put it on the OM 28 Authentic, but they stuck to their guns of copying one guitar. But I said to them, if you put this on every OM you make, you'll sell out of them all over the place. But I absolutely love the feel of this neck. The major difference between this neck shape and the neck shape, in other words, so it's an asymmetrical V. The V starts at one side and goes to the other side. So when you're down at one end and when you're up at the other end, that thing stays right in the cleft of your thumb, right where you need it. but it doesn't have the big fat 1930s heel on it. So it doesn't get big chunky as you go up. It stays low. So it feels more like a modern electric guitar in that respect. So because it's got a modern heel on it, and the neck heel being the thing that sticks down the prow of the, or whatever you would call that on a boat, it's much shallower than a real 1930s Martin. And that's a good thing. So when you get up into the upper frets, by the time you're up in the 9th fret, 10th fret, whatever, you're still got a really surprisingly low profile, comfortable neck. But I got to play, when I reviewed this guitar, and the last time I reviewed the latest Modern Deluxe guitars, Michael Dickinson got that OM 45 out of the case for me, the OM 45 Deluxe, and let me put them side by side. And when you're down in the first position, the cowboy chord area, it's really difficult to tell the difference between those two guitars. They did a really good job when it comes to the neck profile. So another reason why I wish I had that guitar.
I'm going to invite you to play 20 questions or 10 questions, but please, again, be careful about your cable making a little bit of noise.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
All right, so Spoon, with all that being said, I don't want to flex my muscles too much, but I kind of do. I know last week we played 20 questions at the beginning of the show. I'd like to end this show playing that game, but in honor of having the CEO-10 and in honor of me being pretty smart at this game, would you like to play a game of 10 questions?
I could do that in the way that you do it with the guys at the factory. I would like to do that, but I want to mention one other thing about this guitar that we haven't mentioned. People are going to look up the specs and see what the tuning machines are and all that. But this has the titanium alloy neck rod in it. And the Modern Deluxes, there was a shortage in titanium alloy during the pandemic and stuff, so some of the Modern Deluxes don't have them. But this guitar does have it. It's not a titanium neck rod. It's an alloy that contains titanium in it. So it's a smaller neck rod than Martin's normal neck rod. And to fit this nice neck, this nice shallow neck, and the shallower fingerboard that you get on the Modern Deluxes that have 1930s depth through the fingerboards. But it is made from titanium, so even though it's a smaller neck rod, it's stronger than steel. It's not pure titanium or anything like that. It's an alloy, but it's a steel alloy that contains titanium, and that's one more cool thing about this guitar. So,
who cares? Let's play 20 questions.
I thought you said 10 questions. Why are we doing 10 questions?
We're going to do 10 questions, and I want to go on record. Anybody who's listening to the audio version of this podcast, if you heard long delays a few minutes ago when Spoon was asking me about the neck on the CEO-10, I was showing the camera my neck, and he was not taking the bait.
Oh, I did not.
Oh, I know. Pay attention, young man.
Oh, your neck. You were showing your neck. I see. That's what you were doing. I thought you were like doing a kind of a Mussolini. I didn't like that question.
Or Silvio from Sopranos.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I couldn't think of the name. Thank you.
Oh. So this is my week to guess, and it's your week to think of a guitar. I should have thought of that before I decided to cut this in half.
10 questions. Think of a guitar. Okay. I've got a guitar in mind. And you only get 10 questions, but at your own peril. So here we are playing 10 questions that Maury subjects people at the factory to randomly, and they have to guess a Martin guitar that is currently for sale from Martin, and he gets up to 2 guesses that are allowed to be part of the 10 questions.
Why not just one? Jeez. All right.
Sold. No, I'll give you 3. If you want to waste 3 questions on model names of your 10, we'll go for it.
I do.
10 questions on the clock. Go.
Does this guitar have a titanium alloy neck rod?
It does.
Does this guitar have a 10 in the name?
It does not.
Does this guitar have a dreadnought body size?
That's a no. 3 questions.
Does this guitar have a long scale neck?
Yes. 4 questions.
Does this guitar have pearl anywhere on the top?
Yes. 5 questions.
Is this guitar the D45 Modern Deluxe?
No. 6 questions.
Is this guitar the D42 Modern Deluxe?
No. 7 questions. 1 model name left.
I had expected to win by now, so I don't have a lot of questions ready. Is this guitar built with an OM-sized body?
Yes.
Is this guitar the OM42? Wait. Did I swing? Did I check my swing? Is this guitar the 00042 Modern Deluxe?
Well, since you asked me if it had a long scale neck and I said yes. You wanted the check swing.
Ah, man.
I thought I was waiting for you to. I was hoping you were going to say, does this have snowflakes on the bridge? And I'd say yes, and you'd guess CEO-10, but it wasn't.
Well,
It was, in fact, the OM42 Modern Deluxe.
Oh, the OM42.
That's
Dang
right.
it.
I consider that closest to the CEO-10, even though it's long scale neck, because the 10 has the 1/4-inch OM bracing. And I think it sounds more like an OM. When you finger pick it, when you strum it, it sounds bigger and wider. Doesn't have that focus punch of a 5/16-inch braced short scale triple O. It's got that wider
Yeah.
bubble of tone that's much more like an OM. That's why I want it. I don't know. How are you on like a 370-month payment plan?
Well, Lori and I really try to live by 340 or less, but you know. How long are you going to live?
Hopefully long enough to pay it off. I could put it in my will for you, but
I will tell you that we can't do that, but I do want to include you in our thrilling conclusion to my trivia question before we put a bow on this and wrap up our episode of the CEO-10. We really should try to get Thomas on the program sometime, but until we do, this is all we have for you guys. We really hope you enjoyed it. Let us know in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. Have you seen or played a CEO-10 in the wild? Please let me know. I know one of you guys out there can say yes, because that's the answer to the trivia question. Of all the people that have ever watched this program, that have ever taken part in recording this program, including me and Spoon, there is only one person who played this guitar, this CEO-10, number 86 of 100, besides me. Who is that person? Spoon, you have one more opportunity to guess.
it could be 2 people. I'm thinking 2 people. I'm going to have to flip a coin. Maybe. I'm just trying to think, would you have had it? Would you have had it? Did they both get to the factory? Both were interested in it. I'm going to make a guess. I'm going to guess it's Lee Kimbrell from Cornwall, England.
I'm sorry, you are wrong.
Ah!
But you were so dang close. He was in the car with him. It's our pal, Roeth.
Ruth! Oh, of course it was. I knew one of them mentioned it. I knew it. He was the other person that had written me about it and asked me about it. I should have put it together. Sorry about that, Ruth.
Well, you could have flipped that coin a little bit differently and all things would have ended better. It was really nice
Hi,
to see
Lee.
you, Roeth, and Lee, and Rosanna. It was a really great visit. After Martin Fest is over and we're all driving home and we're exhausted, there's one more thing to do, and I was very, very lucky to have our friends take a visit to Maury's music, and that guy was not leaving this place until he got a chance to play it. So thank you again for getting your mitts all over it. Only you and I have done so. If I'm being really honest, I don't think Lee took the opportunity. I know he watched Roeth play it, and I hope I'm right, or otherwise my trivia question has no merit, but I'm pretty sure Roeth's the only one who played it. So I want to thank all of you guys for listening to this episode. Spoon, I know the first 45 minutes of this program were anything but fun. Damn the internet and laptop gods. They're not going to win. They can try, but they're not going to beat us down. And I appreciate you hanging around through that. So a lesser man would have been like, some other week, I have to go and throw this laptop into the ocean. And except for my extreme disbelief that Cape May, New Jersey could have lobster rolls better than Cape Cod, Massachusetts, I really had a good time talking with you today.
Can't make that claim. I've never had one on Cape Cod, so I can't make that claim. But it's definitely the best one at Cape May that I've had, and I've had multiple. So,
from all of us at Martins and More, thanks for listening.
Hear you later.